Um, that we will control the flow of the meeting and we will introduce each action item, discussion, and informational item prior to board discussion and voting. As a quick reminder, we ask everyone to speak loudly and clearly throughout the meeting. The first action for the call to order is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We also ask that you keep your mics muted until you are given the opportunity to speak during either a public comment or public voice. My name is Nick Hartman. I am in the program under the Bureau of Training Services for the Constable's Education and Training Board. To the left of me is Chair Craig Westover. Would you like to introduce the rest of the board members, or would you like me to?
I can do that. So to my left, Trish, go ahead and introduce.
I'm Tricia North Bowden, Court Administrator of Chester County and Vice Chair.
Major.
Major Bill Call, I'm the Director of the Bureau of Training and Education for the Pennsylvania State Police.
Constable out.
Harry Albert, Constable, Lebanon County.
And in the, yes, John.
Have we heard from Judge Davis? Is he?
We have not heard from Judge Davis.
Okay.
Here in the conference room, we have
Don Fowle, the manager of the Bureau of Training Services.
I'm Deb Williams. I'm the new old curriculum manager.
Tracy Beaver, PCCD staff, Constable Training Program.
those PCCD staff on the phone. Would you like to introduce and recognize yourself?
Sherry Leffler is, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sherry.
Sherry Leffler, the supervisor for the Constable's Education and Training Program.
Sally Barry, Director of Office of Justice Programs here at PCCD.
And I can recognize the other
Just a
staff on
sec.
the call. We have Teresa Ford is on the call. Charles Gartzlate is on the call from PCCD staff. And at this time too, I would just like to recognize at the last board meeting, I did at that point in time let everyone know that Nick Hartman was going to be leaving the program. He has since that time decided to stay with the program. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and get that as part of the minutes then as well. Thank you.
Judge Davis actually just came in. Would you like to introduce yourself, Judge Davis?
Good morning, everyone. Judge Walden Davis, City of Chester, Delaware County.
Look, recognizing that we now have a quorum, all 5 of our board members are in attendance. At this time, I would like to ask the training delivery coordinators to identify themselves. Steve, I believe I saw you come in.
Yeah, good morning, Nick. Steve Sheilo from Penn State University.
Tony
Tony
Muha.
Muha, are you here?
Yes, Tony Muha with Penn State University.
Temple? I
It
believe I
looks like
saw
we have-
Lou Mancini.
Yeah, I was going to say Lou Mancini is on the call. And then I also failed to recognize E. Katerina Shaw from the Office of Fiscal Financial Management at PCCD as well, is also on the call.
Recognizing then all of our training delivery coordinators. I would like to now turn this over to Chair Westover.
Okay, I would like to this time recognize and do a memoriam for our board member, Francis Bud Pites, who passed away on Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. Bud had worked as a field engineer for Bell Telephone Company for 31 years and was an elected constable for over 30 years. Bud was an avid community member and served on many committees, including the board for over 6 years. Board members and program staff would like to recognize Bud for his service to the board, as well as his commitment to the community and the constable profession. Thank you.
We would like to remind everyone to please mute their phones. We're getting some feedback from someone. Thank you. All right, at this time, we will begin with the action items. We will ask the board member, I will introduce the first step, which is the board meeting minutes, which we will then the board will make a motion to either approve or second of the motion, state their name for the record for each motion. Again, we're getting feedback. We're asking that you please mute your phone. Tracy, can you see what that is? All right, the first action item is the unapproved draft minutes of the August 10th, 2023 board meeting. They can be found on pages 3 through 10 of the board packet. So the board asks that I read or present any of the materials.
Anybody need it read? Everybody have a chance to review. All right, do I have a motion then to have the minutes approved? Okay, so we have a motion by Constable Albert. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Major. Okay. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That will pass. Thank you. All right, next, now move on to the next one.
Next action item is the unapproved financial report for the November 2nd, 2023 meeting, which can be found on pages 11 through 16.
Okay. And we have extra in Shell to talk about that for us.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to go over the fiscal report for first quarter for constables education and training. That will be for state fiscal year 2023-24. And as it was stated, it's on pages 11 through 16 in your packets. So on page 11, there is a statement of cash receipts, expenditures, and commitments. Under receipt column, you will be showing a balance which was carried over from the previous fiscal year in the amount of $3,433,114.41. The fees collected from the first quarter were $380,048.33. And the total fund available as of September 30th were $3,813,162.74. Under expenditures and commitments column, you will be showing cumulative expenditures as of September 30th, 2023 in the amount of $311,156.13. The total cumulative expenditures and commitments as of September 30th is $3,523,559.47. That includes in the administrative expenditures and commitments $303,253.59. That is also on page 11. At the bottom, the total of uncommitted funds as of September 30th is $289,203.27. And on page 12, the total class fees paid as of September 30th, 2023 is $22,953. Is there any questions regarding the fiscal report numbers?
Yeah, Constable Albert has a question. Go ahead, Constable.
On the checks deposited for reimbursement, that's red? Is that because they haven't cleared the bank, or is that another reason?
Well, it's showing a negative, but because it's still showing as a expense, but it is simply just the way how that's showing on the report.
So that amount's actually added in.
Yeah, so that is the
So
total deposited for the checks.
Yeah, no, I agree. We had this conversation with fiscal before. It's kind of misleading that it shows us as a negative. It's actually, so that's money constables pay for basic training, basic firearms. If somebody failed or was a no-show, that's so.
Thanks.
Any additional questions on the financial report? Any public comment about the financial report? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the financial report as presented.
Weldon Davis like to make a motion to approve the financial report that has been presented.
Judge Davis makes a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Reports review has been successfully approved. Thank you.
The next action item is the board meeting schedule on page 16.
All right, that's Tracy Baber. So where did you come up with these dates?
Thank you, Chair. They pretty much follows in line with this year's dates. So next year's meetings will be held on February 8th, May 9th, August 8th, and also November 7th. They will be held here in the PCCD office in Harrisburg, as well as through the Microsoft Teams. And those constables who wish to join Public Voice can do that. And also those who wish to join through the actual Teams instead of calling in, they can ask for the Teams invite and that is forwarded on to them.
Hey, some I've never asked that on our, when we come up with our training board schedule, something, that happens that causes a meeting to be, canceled. Do we have some sort of a built-in, alternate dates or?
No, we don't. And part of the thing too, when we select these meeting dates, we need some lead time before the commission meetings. So if the board was to pass something that had to go to the commission, we have enough time to get that into the commission packet. In the past, if we've had to cancel a meeting, the ones I can think of is mainly, snow, board members couldn't make it or whatever. We would just then work with the board, reschedule it, because then we have to sunshine it, we have to advertise it. So that can be a little tricky. So we don't pick dates ahead of time. That's an alternate.
So I plowed snow yesterday, John. So, oh yeah. Anyway, we had to start the season off right. So leaves mixed with snow, 6 inches of it. So, all right. Does anybody have any conflict with any of these dates that have been presented? Anybody on the board? They look good. Any public comment on our dates that we've chosen? I think we're clear of all the holidays and clear of any other issues, right? I'll entertain a motion then to accept the schedule. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second? Second, Constable Albert. Further questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Schedule has been accepted. Tracy Beer. We are all set. Thank you. All right. What's next, Sean? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I know Sean. You know Sean.
I do. The next action item is the instructor certification. Tracy, do you want to start with PSU?
Okay, going with Penn State Jazzy, they put forth 3 instructors for additional topics as well as new instructors. The first one is Stephen Marshall. He is currently, he's also a constable. He is currently certified in general communications with crisis intervention as well as firearms. And we are requesting that he has defensive tactics added to his certified topics. This program staff have reviewed his applications and we feel that he is qualified for the defensive tactics topics. The next is also instructor Sean O'Block. He is currently employed as Westmoreland County Adult Probation Parole Officer 1. He is currently certified in general. On review of his application and resume, program staff are requesting that he be certified for physical skills and firearms. And the third is Daniel Witt. He is a new instructor and he's currently an Allegheny County police officer. And we feel upon review of his application and certifications that staff recommends he be certified for firearms.
Nick, I'll go with the other one.
Sure. For Temple, the first is Scott Criswanos. Requested topics are general communication and firearms. He is currently a MOPEX firearms instructor, PSP firearms instructor, and NRA firearms instructor. Based on the information provided, staff makes the recommendation of the recertification for staff Criswanos. Staff, Scott was actually a previous instructor under Temple. The second one is Wayne Lamb, who is currently certified, but is requesting the addition of firearms. Wayne Lamb is a Valencia Federal Law Enforcement Training Center with basic tactics instructor. Staff is recommending the board certification for Wayne Lamb for the additional topic listed above. And the last person is Keith Thomas, who is new. Keith, we are requesting general communication skills and firearms. Sir Thomas is a federal air marshal firearms instructor through FLETC, and staff is recommending board certification for Keith Thomas for the topics listed above.
Okay, that completes your list.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do any board members have any questions about any of these instructors? The information can provide it.
I have a question on about these instructors. How many total constable instructors do we have now? I noticed there's one here.
We only have about 6, I think. We were just looking at 7, maybe.
Possibly 8.
Better
Yeah.
than 0.
And just for a little background, so the board has tried to get additional, constables as instructors. One of the things holding back, you have a lot of constables who might have a lot of experience, but they don't have instructional background or experience. So over the course of the program, the board put on a 40-hour instructor development, school-sponsored, constables. They would select guys because, they have to be employable by Penn State or Temple. They have their own employment rules. And we've conducted probably, I think we did 5 of those instructor development courses ranging from, maybe 10 guys to 15 guys per class. And if we were just looking at these numbers throughout the life of that, we've trained probably 40 or 45 constables to be instructors. But over time, we've only kept between 6 to 8. I think sometimes it might be different, constables talking to some of these guys who didn't follow through. Once they get up there, it's a little different. Now you're up in front of your peers, that kind of thing. Well, so the board has done a lot to try and promote getting constables as instructors, but unless they've had other instructional experience, from some other source, it's been hard to keep them.
And John,
Time's gone by.
you were fairly close on the numbers. We have had over the life of the program, there have been 40 constable instructors who have gone through a 40-hour instructor development program that was offered by the program. Of those 40, we currently only have 6 that are active, working, board certified constable instructors.
Yeah, time's gone by. I mean, a bunch of years. When I went through, I think the other fellows who were in that class with me actually are gone. 6. They're
Yeah.
gone.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, I know a couple of them out in the western part of the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Longer for this, last man standing out of my class. There you go.
Yes,
So,
you
I
are.
mean, the board has tried to help them get to, the credentials that they need to be instructors, so.
Any public comment on the instructors that have been proposed? Hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion for the fellows that were listed today. Possible Albert, so I have a second.
I'll second that, just my voting.
Okay, we have a second. Any further questions? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? instructors have been accepted. Thank you. All right, Nick.
Great. The next action item is the Act 49 accommodations policy. Sherry, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. I know that the board has seen this various times over the past year, year and a half, and this is the final Act 49 accommodations policy that we would like to present to the board for approval. We did go through with Chief Counsel, staff and I met with Chief Counsel Deborah Sandiford, and we consolidated things and made it cleaner, a cleaner version. One of the things that was changed of significance is on page 24, I believe we have it listed, where let me find it here, where we say unless reasonable accommodations are approved by staff. So we just didn't want to leave it out there that if a reasonable accommodation was submitted, it would automatically be approved. So that was one of the significant changes, but I feel this is a much better policy going forward. And it does lay out that that the board and staff still have the capabilities to be flexible and to, make decisions on these accommodation requests on a case by case basis as well. Has the board had an opportunity to look through the final accommodations policy? And are there any questions?
No, it's pretty straightforward. And like I said, this has been a long time coming. So I guess the process from here is, once the board takes action today, then we have to go in front of the commission.
So this would then go in front of the commission at their meeting coming up. I believe it's early December.
December,
then
yes.
If the commission approves it, then we can make it effective, 1 January for the next training.
I assume that this policy is consistent with like the sheriff's training policy, accommodation policy.
Yeah, and they do not have their own, because the academy at Penn State, we basically use Penn State's as needed, their accommodations office or whatever.
Right.
And that varies depending on what's going on with the academy, because those deputies are there for 6 months. So it's kind of a different situation. So, but yes, it's fairly consistent, so.
Question, D, so they're saying what the requirements and expectations, walk up and down stairs, steps, et cetera. No more waivers for stuff like this on a firearm course? Is that what we're saying?
In what respect?
Well, they're saying that you have to be able to do that. And we have guys that waive out from kneeling and stuff like that all the time. Are we saying now that we're not going to let them waive for those type of things?
Right, and quite frankly, they shouldn't be. I mean,
Well, I understand the law enforcement side. We're
Right.
talking about elected people that are self-employed.
no, and I'll tell you, this has been the issue. So this is one reason the board has never mandated participation in, say, defensive tactics.
Yeah.
That you've been able to waive out.
Yeah.
Because, everybody else, when I say everybody else, MOPEC, state police, deputy sheriff,
Any law enforcement.
they all have an employer who can set standards
Correct.
for job and, that kind of stuff. So you have to meet those kind of requirements first.
Yeah.
In fact, the deputy sheriff side, before they come to the academy, they have to get a physical, that their department has to sign off and the doctor signs off, the deputy's capable of doing these physical things that they're going to participate in the academy. This issue has gone back and forth for 25 years. So that's why the board's never said you have to participate in DT. We offer the waiver. You can waive out of participating. But of course, you can't say you learned a hands-on skill by watching, so.
So
And if I could
that-
add-
so they'll-
If I could add there
Right,
too,
sure.
we do not allow any waivers for firearms. So the section that you're referring to there for under section 5, subsection D, walking up and down stairs, that would be mandatory because they are on the firearms range and we have no waivers of participation on the firearms range. But as John
This
stated,
is-
we do have the waivers for defensive tactics.
And this is, more intended. We've had over the years, a lot of people say, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic or anything. We've had people come to the range with oxygen tanks. We've had people come to the range, with walkers. I think, that from just a straight out safety standpoint, that's an issue, and if you can't get to firing line under your own motion, et cetera, and the board's gonna certify you to carry a weapon on the street. I mean, that's kind of incongruent to.
I think it should be consistent. If we're gonna make them have physical requirements for firearms, they should have it for DT too.
Right. And on the firearms, we also, there's a much higher safety concern too.
Sure.
With the DT, and this is just over the years, one of the concern is, in constables being independent contractors, like, well, hey, if I get hurt during DT, then I can't work, I lose income or whatever. And the board has been understanding of that. But the board is also by you, saying you're waiving out of participation. You can't really say that you've learned that hands-on skill. And really that ends up being the constable's own liability.
Sure.
We had a prime example of that. 2 constables conducting a transport. Prisoner gets out of his cuffs, leans forward, takes the constable's handgun. Constable's struggling. The other constable doesn't do anything. This was a Con Ed class we did years ago. And the prisoner discharged the weapon several times. Nobody hit. He ends up carjacking. The other constable tried to use his baton, his OC, et cetera, stayed in the fight. Guy got away, but that constable participated in DT. He was certified in things, carried his tools. The other constable never participated in DT, wasn't OC, baton. To me, it's a prime example of kind of, are you mentally prepared on the street? So, and even after that, the board didn't say, we're going to make you participate, mandatory participation in DT. So
the other unique part of this whole thing is, so to get your certification as a constable, you don't have to take firearms. You don't have to be firearms certified. So
correct.
I look at the firearms as kind of a standalone for me, where, that mandate that you have to do these things because you've decided you want to be a firearms certified also. I mean, that's kind of the unique part of our program is that you can get your basic training, get your certification and be a non-firearms certified constable to work for the courts. And so the courts allow you to do that. Hey, that's on the county. That's up
And
there.
they are 2 separate things. Totally agree with them. The problem is that when you can't kneel here and you can kneel there. And that coming from, do we go on election day? That's PERDs. Oh, you don't have to follow PERDs. You don't put gaslight. You don't like the gas lights anymore. Oh, but you have to follow PERDs. There's too much of that and it costs all this issues with the constables.
Right.
Let's come up with one rule. Live with it or not. If it applies here, it applies there. That's my position on it. And I agree. There's half of these guys shouldn't have guns. And I've been in classes where I don't want to stand next to a bunch of them. But let's be consistent. Both sides, not just firearms.
If I could add on page 24, at the bottom of page 24, we do address the skills, the physical skills. All physical skills training is determined by the board will be completed in person. That paragraph, we are saying that it is essential and failure to participate would fundamentally alter the intent of that in-person subject material. So it's not saying that it is mandatory, but it is addressed for the physical skills. I just wanted to point that out. Under the classroom.
Any other board members have comments or questions? Major, you look puzzled.
I'm just thinking it through, like the pros and cons of both.
And it's been hard over the years,
It's a big issue.
It is, and there are a lot of constables who have advocated that, and I think the board, we've gone back and forth over the life of the program. They've always felt they need some more statutory authority to set some kind of, lack of a better term, physical standard, or whatever. Again, because everybody else, it's set by their employer, PSP, sheriffs, MOPEC has physical standard, police departments have physical standards. So it's kind of that lacking that employer-employee relationship. There's a lot of things that are not very clear whether or not the board could, step in.
Because they're self-employed contract.
Right, because they've been determined as self-employed contractors. So
playing devil's advocate.
No, I understand.
We're self-employed contractors, but we're told what we have to do.
As the ADA coordinator for my court, I appreciate the fact that this policy was created for, to give the guidance for program staff and the board, because it's so important that we are in compliance with the ADA. So having something that can be that guiding document for these situations is so important. And I think the folks that, worked on this did a really nice job.
And what I would say is, I think, over the life of the program, accommodations have tended to be more what I would call temporary. A guy ends up he gets injured and, he's at a Con Ed a couple weeks later or fire, so it's a temporary, it's not a long-term or permanent thing. It has what historically I've seen over time it's a temporary issue. So.
What do you think, Judge? I haven't heard anything from you, so.
I appreciate Constable Albert's feedback. I think that there's a lot of vagueness within some of the rules and policies and procedures. So his opinion and other opinions should be well documented and thought about as we move forward and onward. So I appreciate that. That's my feedback.
For the record, I totally agree. We have to be pretty stringent. I'm not saying we're not to be. I'm just saying it just needs to be as stringent for everything that we do.
Well, that's the vagueness I was
Yeah.
referring to.
Yeah.
And goes right next to the next topic. Bullets.
Yep.
I'm gonna say the same thing for that.
But, thinking this thing out, the more that we nail down these things, these issues, then if there's some public pushback or whatever, anything we can do to get the General Assembly involved to clean up the definition of a constable and make things better, I think it's a pro. So that's why, like getting these policies, because like John said, 25 years, has been bouncing back and forth about getting this done. I think these are the things we've been trying over the last couple of years to start nailing this stuff down so that, and if they don't like it, hey, get the General Assembly involved and be more than happy to see some legislation. But we haven't seen any legislation since 2009. That's 2009, that many years ago. So if this is what it does to, move things forward, hey, I'm all for it.
But we should measure twice and cut once.
So, any public comment on this policy? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion, Commissioner Bowden, to accept the accommodations policy as presented to the board.
I'll second that motion. Well, indeed.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, and any further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed. And so let the record note the constable is opposed. Waiving abstentions. Motion will pass and we will move on. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The next is the discussion items, and then is a supervisor's report from Ms. Sherry Butler.
Sherry.
Hello again. I had to unmute myself again. So the supervisor's report that had been presented to the board, those statistics are emailed with the packet, were effective or provided as of October 24th, but I do have actual updated stats as of Tuesday of this week. So I'm going to go through those, and the numbers have changed a little bit. So that's why I really wanted to update you, because even though we're still behind, we're getting going forward. So let me start with the Con Ed classes. We scheduled 36 in person. We canceled 3. We have had 33 that were completed. We are completely done with training, has been completed for the year, except for the online training subjects, which those 3 must be completed by 5 p.m. on Friday, November 17th. We have sent out, a 2-week notice, a 1-month notice, that kind of thing. So we're hoping everybody continues to jump on board and get these subjects completed. Out of the continuing education classes, the in-person, we had 810 successfully complete that in-person training. Now I'm going to go into the stats that have been updated for the online. So for de-escalation, we have 545 that have completed. That is 61%. We have had 32 first-time failures and 2 second attempt failures on that online subject. Disease of addictions, 562 or 63% have completed. We have had 53 first-time attempt failures on that subject, 13 second attempt failures, and 1 double failure. Legal updates, we are at 502, which is at 56%, 59 first-time attempt failures, 14 second attempt failures, and 1 double failure. Right now, we have 470 or 53% who have completed all of the 2023 Con Ed requirements and they will be recertified for 2024. We still have about 419 constables and deputy constables who have to complete the rest of these Con Ed requirements for the year. Annual firearms, those increased a little bit as well because we completed classes over the past couple weekends. We've had 561 successfully complete the annual firearms qualification. We've only canceled 6 classes this year, which was good. So our scheduling and our projections are really getting, on par with where we need to be. We have had 33 failures, which is a 5% failure rate for our annual firearms qualifications. And then we had 3 double failures for annual firearms. And I'm not going to review the basic training, basic firearms. Those did not change at all. But I just wanted to highlight the actual changes from when the report was produced until the actual stats for this week. Are there any questions on the stats?
Yeah, so my question is, Sherry, on this online, these failures that we've had, like the 32, and we had 50 some, and so look at the subject. Have we gone back and looked at how much time these folks have actually spent on that online, or are they gaming it, trying to just skip through, and that's why they're getting caught?
Yes, we have. There are some individuals who have taken less than 30 minutes to complete all 3 online subjects, which right now is for a total of 8, 9, 10, 11 hours for this year. But then they pass everything. But then we have other individuals who may take up to 8 hours to go through one of the online modules, like a 4-hour module or subject online, and they're failing. So there really is no rhyme nor reason. I really don't have an answer.
And I will say, everything Sherry just said kind of reflects Deputy Sheriff do their continuing education online. And we have the same kind of issue. Somebody will click through a 4-hour module in 10 minutes and fail, or they'll click through, so both programs, we haven't been able to figure out, what the trend is or why.
We got some geniuses out there that can do that and then get everybody else. Okay.
Do we ask the schools what their input is? Because they do online classes all the time too. What do they do to help that problem with online classes? So, I mean, are we trying the same thing that the schools are trying?
You mean as far as, like universities and everything?
Yeah,
Well,
what are they doing to help decrease the amount of failures for online classes? It
Well,
has to be an ongoing problem.
but it also varies widely, universities, my wife teaches for a college and has some online courses, but she has discretion on how many times somebody can take it and those kinds of things. So, board policies, you get 2 attempts at a, test. And one thing, and when we get to the curriculum for 2024, I'll talk a little bit. We are going to pilot the one course in both programs where it's a little more interactive. So to try and kind of slow people down where they have to do more. The idea is if you're slowing them down, they're absorbing it a little better. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the next year's training. So
And
Sherry,
the only
bottom
other-
line right now, active and
Go ahead.
certified constables, that number you had on page 2 is 870. Is that
Correct.
correct, or where are we at?
Yes, no, that has stayed the same. And also the number of firearms certified is still 669 or 77%. And then just to
And you
finish
had
up my
something else?
report, yeah, the only other thing I wanted to update the board on was the regulation changes. Were approved by the commission at their September 20th meeting. And I am working with our chief counsel right now on taking our documentation and getting it pushed forward through the Office of Budget, Office of Policy, through the governor's office. So that is our next step in the external approval, review and approval of the regulations. And that concludes my report.
All right. Any further questions for Sherry?
Chair, I do have 2 questions.
Judge Davis.
In regards to the 6 cancellations, is it other than inclement weather or things of that nature that would cause the 6 cancellations? And I heard Sherry say that that was actually not a bad number.
It's usually low enrollment. And so, you know, and because we lost a lot of constables during COVID, guys who had been training with us for years, and then we have this new batch, it kind of threw off our projections of how many classes do we need every year. And we tend to go on the safe side, maybe schedule a little more than we think we might need, because if guys fail early on, they're going to be looking for courses later in the year, or if they cancel out, you know, so it's better to have those scheduled and the training slots available. And because if we cancel it, it doesn't cost us anything. But they're usually low enrollment. And so in that case, if 3 or 4 people enrolled in a class, we have the school work with them to get them rescheduled to another class that will work for them. So.
And then per policy, the double failure, what happens there?
So if I, for firearms, if I double fail, I can pay to take it again one more time during the year. And so if I then come back to another course and I shoot, and you know, you get 2 attempts each time. And if I double fail, you gotta wait till next year.
You wouldn't get a 3rd attempt then.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? Well,
No, I'm good.
you're good? Okay, and we will move on. What do we have next year?
Next is the informational items. The first one is the Act 49 firearm ammunition policy.
Oh, I've been waiting for this all day. I've been waiting for this all day. So, John Fowl, we're gonna talk about the French ammunition. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chair from Venango County.
Yep.
So, you know, during COVID, as ammunition became in tight supply, it was, you know, a lot of shortages. We did allow constables to qualify with ball ammunition. You know, and ball ammunition is pretty much an antiquated term, but it's basically a lead projectile, you know, and typically anymore it's covered in a copper jacket. You know, the term ball goes back a long time. Of course, ball ammunition is cheaper. And I know during that same time period, MOPEC, they required departments to qualify with duty ammunition. They lifted that requirement during COVID and the ammunition shortage as well. Of course, they've now back to, you know, departments have to qualify their officers with whatever duty ammunition. Constables, duty ammunition's their choice. You know, it's what they want to carry. They feel will, you know, suit their needs best. But one of the things we're seeing is guys are continuing to qualify with ball ammunition. And from kind of a liability standpoint for constables, that's probably not the best. Ball ammunition will over penetrate a target. It will ricochet more, you know, there's a higher risk of ricochet, et cetera. Of course, collateral damage and all of these issues. So we're going to try and educate these guys a little more through training bulletins and stuff. We cannot dictate, you know, it has to be generally accepted law enforcement ammunition. If you look out there, pretty much no law enforcement agency or department allows ball ammunition for duty ammunition. You know, it's typically a hollow point or whatever. So we're just we want to put this information forward to kind of, so the board's aware that we're going to try and, lack of a better term, an information campaign to educate them a little bit. Ball ammunition might be cheaper, but in the long run, you know, for liability purposes and, you know, making sure you hit your target, what you intend to, a different type of ammunition is better, you know, so. And Harry?
I'll have lots. I can wait.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Oh, so feel free to weigh in. You know, because, you know, he piqued my interest. I mean, when he used the definition French of what a bullet is, I wanted to, you know, I want to
So-
follow up on
I'll go back to the other thing. We're concerned about them kneeling, but we're not concerned about them shooting through 3 people if they have to use their gun.
Well,
It's either you can or you can't. We can't approve them to shoot ball ammo and to carry ball ammo on the street.
well,
It's dangerous.
I agree with you, but I think it always goes back to our limitations under the statute, and that's one of the things, it's interesting. And we talked about this a little bit, I think I mentioned, so South Carolina had a constable system exactly like Pennsylvania's. They're locally, still are. But years ago, they introduced legislation that allowed essentially the MOPEC of South Carolina to set standards that constables had to follow so that they are on par with all other law enforcement. Things like, firearms and duty ammunition and, equipment and training standards. So I think right now, when you look at the statute and the responsibilities of the board, it's really thin. There's nothing really in there that says the board can set, standards for how you operate and, et cetera. And it's always been a contentious issue, back and forth. And I think some constables, they do a great job of being professional and trying to stay current and are aware of those kinds of things. And other guys, not so much. So I think it would be a really hard point for the board to say, here's what the standard is for you to carry as far as duty ammunition. I don't think we have the legal backing to be able to push it to that point.
Is Tony Muha, Penn State, you still on the line?
Yes.
Tony, in your experience this year with running quals, how much, or what was the level of ball ammunition you were seeing that guys were bringing for qualification?
Just off the top of my head, Craig, without looking at any statistics, I would say a third, roughly.
Yeah, that's a significant number. Or more. Okay. So we're,
Yeah,
I guess
that's
probably region by region, huh?
yes, and that's just a guess, total guess. I mean, I could go back and look through, but that's just a guess.
Okay. So anecdotally, I mean, is any of these folks, have you questioned, talk to any of them about their reasoning for using ball ammunition, anything like that's going on, any interaction?
I have been recently talking to some of the constables about it and the issues with over penetration and whatnot, and to rethink it. And I've gotten both sides of the argument, as you probably would guess. But so I'm trying to put the word out there.
Okay. I mean, has it been a cost factor, they said, or what are they, what is the reason behind it? Because I know there's still a disparity between, jacket hollow point and ball ammunition as far as switching by, out on the market right now.
Yeah, cost was one of the factors that was mentioned to me.
Okay. See, that's another situation we're in because, as independent contractors, their budget, how much money they have to expend on things. All we can do is really push the liability side of it and say, yeah, but you may save a few bucks here, but what if you get sued down the road because of over penetration, hitting grandma three mobile homes away, whatever, and that's just the way it is.
Guys I talk to all carry duty when they're on the street, but they use ball on the course. And what's happening is, that when you use the jacket, when they use the ball stuff, they're usually brass, and when you use the hollow points, they're usually silver. And when you go out, when you're qualifying, half of the course has brass and the other half has white, has the white one. So almost every one of the guys, they put 3 or 4 ball first and then put 2 hollow points on top of it in case they get caught. Happens every year. It's been happening since I've been elected. Matter of fact, it was even taught how to do it that way years ago. The guys would say, oh, no, don't use all your duty ammo. Use it this way. I mean, because there's no set yes or no rules, and there's no set yes or no rules. Some say yes, some say no, and then you have everyone conflicting with each other. So that's my position, yes or no.
And I will say to you, when I talk to constables, when I talk to them at training or I talk to them on the phone and these issues come up, I say to them ultimately, you know, and I agree. I think there should be, but I think we need legislative authority to set standards. But what I always remind constables, I said, you know, yes, you're an independent contractor, but ultimately it's your liability. They're not gonna sue the county. They're not gonna sue, you know, there's no department to sue. There's, you know, I mean, ultimately, it's the constable, that, you know.
Could be bigger than that though, but yeah.
No, I agree, but they have it's more than just you know, if a trooper is involved in something, you know, he has an organization that somebody can go after and say, well, they didn't train him right, or they didn't, or whatever, but ultimately it comes down to that concept, and they have a lot to lose. I mean, you guys know, you know, personal liability. It's not just, oh, it's kind of a business, you know, liability. It's a huge liability just on you personally. So, I mean, that's something that constables have to, you know, weigh every time they go out, you know, even. So.
Constable, Chairman Craig, Tony Muha again. I was looking through some of the class statistics, and that may be a little high. It depends on the class. I mean, I could give you a breakdown at some point because we do document that. But I'm not sure at this point. The third may be a little high.
Yeah. Well, I was interested in Constable Albert's analysis of this, guy stuffing the ball and then putting, checking all point on top in case somebody pulls a mag and checks them. And, have you seen that in your, Travis?
I have not personally. I mean, we haven't done an official check on the line when the guys are on there. I mean, there is some integrity and they do sign those agreements about, you know, academic integrity and stuff. So I have not pulled that. I haven't observed that. So I couldn't speak to it.
Just look at the ground next time you have a class and see how much silver stuff is next to the brass stuff during the qualification course.
Well, and I would say when I've been out of firearms classes, because typically when they're doing a qual, you know, they're told, you know, take your boxes of ammo, throw one in your cargo pocket, because they move up, shoot the first, you know, they got to reload mags at a certain point. And so from start to finish, they don't have time. They're not going back to their bags. So whatever ammo, and I've observed they're putting the same boxes on their body, you know, the same type of rounds, because they do that first phase and then the second phase, and, you know, they're done with the qual. So, but.
Interesting though. That is interesting.
And Chair Westover,
Okay.
I just wanted to add that if you are interested in that number of how many Full Metal Jacket types we have in the system, I could have a report run for that, if that's something that you're
I'd
interested
appreciate
in.
that. I'd appreciate that, especially since you're trying to slide out the door here next year. I'd like to have that report for you later.
It'd be
Okay,
great if
sounds
we could
good.
figure out how many people say they qualified for the duty, but actually use the ball. That would be a very, very good thing for us to be on the lookout for our instructors. Hey, is this really happening? Because if it is, we need to address it.
Additionally,
Agreed.
I don't mean to just chime in, but additionally, is there a possibility that it can be reached out to the instructors? Doesn't have to be legislative, but and rules or policies can be reached out to the instructors that, hey man, listen, this should change. There should be no, you know,
So
other
Judge,
than-
every year, both schools, we have instructor updates. So those typically November, December. In fact, both schools have their updates and staff attend those. Because there's a lot, you know, we have new instructors, we have older instructors. And one of the things we do review is maybe things we've seen in training this year that instructors need to look out for. So we will bring that up at instructor updates. Anytime there's, you know, board policy change, we got to educate them on that, saying, hey, you know, the code of conduct got updated. Now pay attention to these things or whatever.
Right.
So we do those, and those are scheduled for this year.
Okay.
And that particular item
Holistically.
is on our agenda for our instructor update sessions. So we will be discussing
good.
that with the instructors.
Other than the obvious hollow point versus ball, ballistically, what's it do to the weapon? Is it different for the weapon with 180 ball versus 180 hollow point? Does it do something different to the firing of that weapon?
I'm not a ballistics expert, and in my personal opinion, my personal experience, I haven't really noticed much. I think it does when you get out the distance.
Mhm.
That's when, things might change, but, and again, I think it's, the bigger concern is, because I just updated the stats. I've always been saying there were 7 constable shootings since our program started. I totally forgot about, there were 8. And all of those, the farthest one was just over 15 yards. So we've never had one, at a long distance. And then they've either been kind of just around 15 yards or literally 2-3 yard up close, almost point blank. Of those 8 shootings, that's the data we have as far as guys who were trained and certified by us and then involved in something almost straight. So.
I'm just looking for things like to be able to publish that, say, hey, guys, look, there is a difference. That's why you want to use the hollow points. I'm just looking for other things to add to it.
The only thing I would say is, I think, and just, it's just my personal experience and opinion is, I think when you start getting into ballistics, you get into, there's a lot of if this, then that. And really the key factors for these guys is, and any law enforcement is, I want to be able to hit the target I'm aiming at, and I don't want to hit anything else. And when you're talking about ammunition that easily overpenetrates, that to me is the more important factor to educate them about. So.
Well, John, maybe you have time between now and the next meeting, you can consult the French, see if they can give you some additional information.
Well, what I will say to you, Chairman Westover, since you're so interested. So we commonly refer to a carbine as a short rifle.
Yeah.
Carbine was actually a caliber. It was the size of a caliber, but I'll talk with you after the meeting about that.
Outstanding, outstanding. And I look forward to getting educated. All right. If we can, let's move off the ammunition policy of the French and let's go to the curriculum overview. I guess that would be John.
Yes, I actually handed out a corrected version because what was included in your packet was not the correct version of the curriculum descriptions. And of course, these will get published when we, put out our training bulletins about training, signing up for training for next year and everything. The 3 online courses are working with different abilities. This is kind of a category that used to be referred to as special needs. So when you're encountering somebody with maybe physical difficulties, whether it's hearing impairment or somebody who's on the spectrum, what's an appropriate way to communicate with them and handle yourself in a professional manner. And, also too, kind of, does it bring up a legal question of, can I serve this person? Or, do they have somebody else that I have to serve? So those kinds of issues. The lessons learned in the online is kind of around evictions. It's a little bit on the, hey, here's the paperwork trail, not so much, but just a little refresher. But actually, we have 3 examples of evictions that went very bad. 2 became barricaded persons incidents, and local, police had to respond. So we kind of talk, it's a lot on the safety factor of when you're serving an eviction and, that kind of thing. And it seems very rudimentary, talking with MDJs and constables, it seems like there's been a little uptick in that since the evictions have started again. So it's kind of more of a safety around evictions module. Then legal updates, sure.
Does any of what you're referring to refer to Philadelphia? I know there was something different going into Philadelphia where.
No, we have not brought that up. I know we've talked internally. I've talked with our executive director about that because one of the House committees did have a hearing down there in Philadelphia about their whole landlord-tenant issue. They have a private law firm that administers the evictions, and they've had some incidents. So they're looking to revamp their landlord-tenant. And I know the courts have started using some constables in Philadelphia to do their landlord-tenant. But there's some issues around that too. So that's kind of, I think that's something separate that'll kind of come up eventually to the board,
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
I know for, anecdotally myself, doing landlord tenants since the pandemic, is different than what it was prior to. I'm getting a lot more opposition, and I've got a lot more folks that are staying right up to the last day, and I'm walking them out the door. And prior to the pandemic, 9 times out of 10, you post that 10-day notice and they were gone. They were gone within that period of time. Now I'm seeing folks stay up right to the last minute. And so it has really changed safety considerations, because not only am I dealing with them and kids and other people that are there that weren't supposed to be there, and animals. Animals is another part of this whole thing, dogs and cats and humane society, and trying to get somebody to come and get. So it has really complicated things since prior to the pandemic. Now I'm seeing all these issues, and I think this update is pretty well needed, because it's getting a lot different.
You work with a second constable when you
My
do an
question.
eviction now?
I don't have the people. I don't have the boys. I don't have the boys. I'm usually a lone ranger. Now, if I get tipped off, I'm gonna have issues. I call a local PD and I'll say, hey, and they've been very good. We had one in particular called in and said he was actively gonna engage with me, and that brought out the entire PD. I had more help than I, could believe. But the fact of the matter is, most times it's the lone ranger, you're out there by
And
yourself.
correct me if I'm wrong, Judge Davis, I think this is that one category where the judge must approve the use of a second constable. I think it's in the rule. And I mean, and I know that in my own county, I have encouraged constables to talk to their judges about that. If, they tend not to have a second constable because of the payment issue. Because I know we're saying the same thing, at least up at the Court of Common Pleas, how, much more difficult, these kinds of matters are becoming. So, I mean, safety is foremost at the top of the, our concern. So really encourage constables that if they're not working with a partner, and if it's an issue of payment, to talk to their MDJ about that.
And for, on, the constable side, from a safety standpoint, that's one thing, if the legislature gets around to it, if they can address, because it isn't, in fact, one of the incidents that we highlight, there were 2 constables.
Yeah.
And this guy still, brandished a weapon and, and it became a barricaded person. So, even having that second person and, you never know. But as Craig said, we're anecdotally hearing there's kind of more resistance on landlord tenant issues. So we thought we'd cover the safety issues again.
I just want to say that I've been getting that same feedback from my local constables, that the dynamic has changed. So we've had dialogue in Delaware County, we court admin, the constables and my colleagues, saying, hey, listen, at any time that you feel like you need a second constable, I have no problem approving your patients.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
That's good. Yeah, and we need to get that across the state, because in a lot of areas that there's been a lot of resistance to, paying for a second guy.
Yeah.
And, or girl, and like I say, up until now, people were generally getting out, but now it's going to be a regular thing. You're going out 11th day and they're still there, and it's burning more time. Depending on what your rule is. Okay, you got 5 minutes to grab your toothbrush and get out the door. Other guys will give them 15 or 20 minutes, Then you got a landlord standing there, or, whoever's there to change the lock, saying, I don't want all that stuff. Give them a few more minutes. Well, who's paying the bill? Because time's money in this business. So if you're hung up there for an hour or two, that's wrong. I just had one last week, and, what was supposed to be a 2-hour program, and they paid for ahead of time, it was 3.5 hours. So I had to hit them for more money. Unfortunately, I got my money, but that doesn't always happen.
Well, cliff note on a quick story, Delaware County, one of the constables called me and said, Judge, I have a landlord here. He's advocating that he gets inside his property, but the person doesn't want to leave him. It looks like I finally got an opportunity to get out of here, but they want to go back into the property. My concern is safety. Are they going back to get a toothbrush, or are they going back to get a knife?
Yeah.
Right.
So, hey, listen, this landlord's got to wait patiently, because I'm not going to have a constable that I consider that works for my court being killed or possibly hurt while this constable's being impatient about some rent that's probably he or she may never get paid.
Right.
So my concern is the life or the safety of everybody, and not the $1,000 that you may be out of. And, I don't like to be vocal like that, but the reality is safety is safety.
There's even issues with certain landlords that are there. You have problems with them, not the defendant.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It's like, "I'm here for you. Why?"
Yeah.
You know?
Well, continue on, John. I know you have more subjects.
Yeah.
Here.
Legal updates, it's kind of a smattering of some things. One of the things gonna cover just a little bit about some insurance terms and what do they mean, and so, just kind of, what constables should be at least understanding in terminology and what that legal meaning is of some of these terms and that kind of stuff. And then court security will be the in-person, and it should say 8 hours. It's a review on court security, then hands-on. We have a bunch of, scenarios to walk the constables through on court security. We actually, as you know, there's been some incidents lately over the last couple of years at MDJ. Fayette County, there was one here in Dauphin County. So we're gonna highlight some, again, I don't know if, in the MDJ courts, are things becoming more contentious since COVID, settled down? Is it kind of like landlord tenant? Is it becoming more, rowdy, so to speak? I mean, so it's a refresher on court security, so that'll be an in-person contact. And then one of the things I wanted, I'm sorry, and part of that courthouse security is they'll be getting the judgmental use of force. So, and it'll be around courthouse related incidents. So, because we're trying to bring that laser shot back every couple of years for them to get hands-on judgmental use. One of the things we're going to do with the legal updates for online is Temple. So we use Canvas. That's the platform that everybody goes into to take their online training. And of course, there's different software with online training that you can use. In Temple, we're going to pilot the legal updates for both deputy sheriff and constables using a different software where it's going to be, we can make it a lot more interactive. So, instead of just kind of telling you these 4 facts, there might be a lot more where the constable has to click into things to match, to keep them more engaged, so that we're slowing them down a little. So hopefully they're absorbing more information. Staff, we kind of saw a demonstration. It's a much better tool we can set up, so they go through, they have to interact a lot more with the lesson and hopefully get them to absorb more information. So.
I have a question about that. We went through this with my company when we had issues with online training, and we did exactly what you're talking about. We hired a company, we did more interactive. But what we found out is that our normal training program that we had was extended to almost 3 times by adding all the interactive stuff. So that course, this course maybe with all the interactive may be much larger than it needs to be, and it's gonna have to be cut down because of the interactive time, or you're gonna go over your hours. I mean, that's what we found.
No, and that's something we have, that's why we want to pilot this one. And as they develop that, we're gonna have to balance that. You don't want to make everything you do, because now it takes you 8 hours.
Exactly.
Right. So, we recognize there's a balance. So material wise, if I'm having you do an activity that on average would take you 3 minutes or something, we have to consider how much of that is built within the course. So yeah, it's a learning curve for us as well.
It's big time, because we had budgeted hours, and then my GM says to me, hey, I need another 120 hours. I said, for what? Because we implemented a new program.
Right. So we'll do that. That's why we're just starting with one course, and get that fee and see how well that goes. Because then we can look, what's the average time somebody's spending there? Did it go up? Did it, did it not change? I mean, who knows? So.
This is nice. I like that. I like the outline of the course for this year, for next year.
Okay, what do we got next here?
Next is the AOPC data from Josh.
All right, Tracy, can you bring out that document? And it's the second 2 slides. So as I've been telling you, we've been going through this data. And so we had a previous data set. We got a new data set. Dr. Worth and Charles Darkside have been working on it. And they had to go back to AOPC to clarify some data. So that's why we don't have the full report today. We'll have it for you in February. But one of the things that was interesting was the number of MDJ dockets being served by sheriff's offices. And I thought it was interesting. Now, there were 3 counties that kind of came out on the top. And one was Westmoreland, and that's been in practice for, I want to say maybe 8-10 years. The sheriff's office, Sheriff Held, he was a constable, became sheriff. And at that point, they took a lot of the MDJ work away from constables. It's being done by the sheriff's office. But then the next to Lancaster, and I know they did that years ago, but from what I understand, that's kind of fading away. It's constant, the work is returning to constables. And then York surprised me. That popped up as a sheriff's office that's doing a lot of MDJ. I have not had time to look. Is that a reflection of not enough constables, in the county? Has there been a drop? Because York used to have a pretty active group of certified constables, I know. But I just thought this was interesting. So when we look at 2016 to 2022, the numbers kind of went up there a little bit during COVID, how much the sheriff was doing. And then it's dropping back off. But those 7 years adds up to about 182,000 plus dockets. And if you just took that on a flat $5 per docket, that's almost $900,000. So, and every county, for whatever reason, handles things differently for whatever reason. As to whether or not the sheriff is doing certain things for the MDJ. And I know, Trish, you've talked, you're short certified constable, so I don't know, maybe your sheriff's office is doing a little more MDJ work than.
We have less sheriffs and constables right now.
Oh, okay, all right, well, that's true, we're seeing that across all sheriff's offices. But I just thought this was interesting that when over the years, we've talked about where's the revenue going. And it may not seem a lot, but right here in this example, the impact of 3 counties. Now, there were some other sheriffs, they were, 10 dockets, 5 dockets, kind of insignificant. But these 3 sheriff's offices jumped out at how much they were doing. If you go to the next slide, Tracy. And then this is a breakout by the type. So if you kind of look, landlord tenant is still predominantly constables. But then when you look at traffic, that's where it seems to be the bulk of what the sheriff's offices are serving, so. What's that?
Larger fee for those type of offenses?
I don't think so. I mean,
But the sheriff charges more than the constable, don't they?
oh yeah, for their training fee is up to $20.
Yeah.
Their surcharge. But I think it's more, I think it's, well, except for Westmoreland, I mean, that was kind of an active, thing they did. But I don't know if it's just a trend of, and this is what we're gonna try and dig into. Is it just, hey, the number of constables in those counties have correspondingly gone down, and so the sheriff's picking up some of the work, or, I was just be curious, Judge, sheriff's office in Delaware County, do they do much?
No. In
Okay,
Delaware County, no, we're using more constables,
okay,
than the sheriff's office does,
right.
Delco.
And so, that's why I didn't want to, Dr. we're still working on a lot of this. There was a lot more information in the data set that's going to give us a lot more detail. But I just thought this was interesting and we could bring to you, because we've heard anecdotally, sheriffs are doing more MDJ work, but this helped us kind of, put a little more numbers to it.
Numbers on traffic 54.6, 73.4. That's more than 100.
But we're talking of what they serve.
Yeah, on 2022 traffic, 54.6 constables, sheriffs, 73.4. Am I reading that right?
Right, that's not of the total. We're not saying it's split. We're saying of the work the sheriff does.
Oh, out of the work that they do, not out of the total.
Right, not out of the total.
Okay.
Out of the work they do, how much, because I was curious, because, and again, anecdotal information I always heard was, counties that took stuff away from constables and gave it to the sheriff, it was all criminal. Well, when you look at this, it's kind of the same. I mean, there's not a huge difference in how much criminal work the sheriff's doing versus constables. So, Yeah.
But you figure 900,000 out of like 3 counties, you know, that's a significant hit to money that could have came in to our program that went elsewhere.
Right, and of course, we all know on the civil side now, sheriffs, you know, it's kind of 2% or less. But there typically is more than just one $5 surcharge on a civil, you know, because there's several people named, so there's, you know, 3 sets of 5 or whatever. But if you just took a flat $5 per 182,000, it's almost $900,000 in revenue that, you know, isn't being collected by constables. So, you know, in over 7 years, that's maybe $130,000, but still, that's part of that piece where of us asking where did revenue go. So,
Do they factor that, the sheriff's department factor in their service for revenue? Do they project that?
what do you mean? Like,
Do they watch that number and make sure that number hits a certain amount so they have the revenue for training?
no,
It's not like that.
it's hard to track the surcharge for deputy sheriffs because the Court of Common Police system, it just says we collected $5,000 in the sheriff's surcharge. We don't know what's assessed. There might have been 10,000 assessed, and we only collected 5.
Then you have to go through the hierarchy of where it posts first.
And we would have to go to every county. AOPC for the sheriff's surcharge has never been able to give us that data because the system is old enough. It didn't track assessed versus collected like it does on the MPJ side. So. But we really don't know what we're losing on the sheriff's side.
You know what we know what we don't know.
So, Dr. Worth hopes to have a full report for the February meeting. Just, we had to go back to AOPC and when we compared the data sets. The other thing too, that was interesting, it kind of stuck out, he's gonna try and work with them to rectify, is because of the clean slate. Now, there's secure records, so there's no docket number. So that takes away a lot of information. The county, the type of docket, you know, traffic, so we try to want to work with AOPC just at least to provide that data to you, because the number of secure dockets is going to go up and up as clean slate progresses. And that robs us of data to say, you know, hey, they're serving more criminal than civil or whatever. So that's the other one. That number from the last data set has gone up. Not huge, but you're starting to see more of those secure dockets where there's no docket.
Sheriff's system isn't just CPCMS then? They have another system besides CPCMS that they use for tracking the fees?
At the Court of Common Police?
Yeah, isn't that where the sheriff stuff goes in the Court of Common Police?
So what I said, well, yes and no, because you have to remember sheriffs do a lot of civil work for the courts. And that would be like county by county, an internal case management system, so.
And what AOPC told us is they're only getting the total.
Right.
You know, so if, you know, somebody paid this cost and fines, there was this sheriff surcharge, you know, there's still $20. We don't know if 60 was assessed. We don't know if what was totally assessed. And that was their advice to us, was we'd have to go county by county and look at their internal record keeping to try and.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking of Berks County, you can go into the probation history and see all the charges, what they were. It breaks it down on that level. It's a shame they can't do it on the state system.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
Not that it couldn't be done, just hasn't been done.
You know, that's a lot of, there'll be a lot of man hours.
Oh, yeah.
But- And one of the good things on the sheriff's side is, you know, they used to collect it, pay it into the treasury. They now collect it and pay it directly to PCCD. So our fiscal staff has actually, you know, we're getting a little better information because some of the sheriffs, as the fee increased over the last couple of years, they were still collecting the old fee. So our fiscal people are like, hey, it's now up to $20. You have to, you know, start assessing. So we're getting a little more clarity on that side, but not a lot. So.
The next thing we have is training grievance update for 2023 and Nick.
Yes, at the end of each training year, we try to provide the board with a brief description of any training grievances that have occurred. So 2 out of 49 training grievances were received in 2023, and the program supervisor manager resolved these grievances as followed. The first grievance was filed in February 2023 in relation to online training. No information was provided that proved that the constable had completed the online training subject, and therefore this grievance is closed. And the second grievance was filed in March of 2023 in relation to a basic firearms failure. No information was provided to change the circumstances of this denial, and therefore the grievance is closed. Questions on that? Board members?
And then I guess our fifth one is going to be our basic firearms training review. John.
Yes, so we had a work group of instructors, both some in the program and some out. We provided them all the curriculum materials and went through, are we covering the fundamentals for somebody who's new to firearms? That's what this course is geared toward. Bottom line, a lot of the instructors felt we were covering, what needs to be covered on the basic and fundamentals, et cetera. Really, the only recommendation that came out of it, we looked at the qual course as well. They felt that was, on par. Now, MOPEC just updated their course in the last 2 or 3 years, but they instituted a lot of movement. And I think in the consensus with our training population, that is probably not appropriate yet to, they're MOPECs, they're moving towards the target and engaging it. They're moving away from the target and engaging it. You start, I think, at 90 degrees and turn and engage the target. So the instructors felt that what we were doing for qualification was still a good test of there's malfunction, there's distance, there's close in. There is some movement, you got to move to cover and engage and those kinds of things. The biggest thing that came out of it was additional range time, that they think some of these basic shooters would benefit from another 8 to 16 hours to work with them on the range. That was really their main recommendation. And when you look at other basic firearms in Pennsylvania, I don't know how many hours at your academy do the cadets get?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, but it's a substantial amount.
Yeah, I know MOPEC, it's, I think in the 90s, it's 96 hours of firearms. Deputy sheriff is 88, is firearms. So when you look at a lot of the others, they're 75, they're north of 75 hours. And when you do look at it, a lot of that is range time. Deputy sheriff, it's only about a day and a half of classroom. But of course, they're in an academy setting, so they've already had like use of force and some other things building up to it. But the bulk of that time is spent on the range, doing training and range drills, et cetera. So this wasn't, that recommendation of an additional 8 to 16 hours is not unusual. What do you think, Harry?
I think if I should keep my mouth shut or not. Is there a person other than the school to make the recommendations that they teach longer?
Well, what I would say to you is, these instructors, both who are involved in the program and not, they have a vested interest themselves too, as instructors. That's a perception that is, I recommend more training so I can make more money. But what I'd say to you, especially the firearms instructors, they take this very seriously as their liability as the guy who taught you how to handle a firearm, and 2 months later, you're involved in an incident.
It's still a business for them.
But I understand that.
And what do we have in place to make sure that we're?
Well, but this right here, the recommendation coming, we're not gonna just change it because they, because the other thing too, the question from the constable population is gonna be, well, how much more is that gonna cost me?
Mhm.
If we go from, 40 hours to 56 hours, what's that cost? Et cetera, et cetera.
That's where I was going.
Right. So, we just have to make sure that, when we're making something like firearms, you want to be very deliberate about when you're making changes. It's just not an ad hoc. You have to have a good justification and good logic and thinking behind it. Is there training lacking? And that's one of the things I asked him. I said, is there anything we're not covering that in recent years, other firearms training standards have incorporated because they see it on the street, now. And they didn't, think we've missed anything. We still have what we need in there as far as what we're teaching, so.
All right, before we move on to public voice, do we have any other business? And Deb, you've been sitting there very patiently. You have other business.
I do not.
Haven't seen you in years.
I know.
Go around.
Good to be back.
In fact, I was going to introduce Deb to the board members who know. Deb's our curriculum manager. We had Megan Staub. She moved on to a full-time teaching position at HAC. But Deb was our curriculum manager from roughly 2012 to 2019. So she's come back to us, which is a huge help because she knows, curriculum development process. She's very meticulous and does a great job. So we're very happy to have her back on board.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm glad to see it because she did a great job when she was here before. And then she went off the charts. I didn't see her.
Well,
She's back.
I'm back.
You're back. All right. All right, then I guess we'll move on to public voice. So at this point, Tracy, did you have anybody sign up for public?
Yes, Chair. The first one is Abraham Smith. Are you on the phone call?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Morning, Abraham. This is Chairman Westover, and if you would just we have your name. How about your county and your comments? Okay.
Okay. Good morning to Chairman Westover and the board, Westmoreland County, Constable L. Abraham Smith. Just to comment on a few things regarding the ammunition. I completely agree from a liability standpoint to carry hollow points on duty. In fact, everywhere except when you're at your practicing range. But when it comes to qualification, when you think about basic training, the ammunition that your organization provides to the guys going through basic is ball, all the way up to, and they have to provide their own ammo for the qual. But if you're being trained with ball and it's good enough to be trained with to shoot at paper targets, there's no reason when we requal each year, we should have to spend extra money for hollow points to shoot at paper targets. There's just no reason for that. It's an extra expense, and with the rising cost of everything, a lot of guys find that difficult to justify. But that's really my only comment on that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Abraham. Tracy, anybody else?
And the last person is Constable Jason Knapp. Are you on the line?
Good morning. Yes, I am.
Okay, what county are you out of?
Good morning. I'm out of Allegheny County.
Very good. Go ahead with your comments.
Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak. Just wanted to see what the board's feeling on making these calls, they're recorded, available to the constable population. There's a lot of good information that's discussed, and for those who might not be able to join live, wondered if it might be possible to record these and make them available.
Staff, what's your?
That's a question for legal counsel.
Yeah.
I will,
and
Constable.
I don't know if Deborah's on, John. Sorry to interrupt, but is she on?
No, she is not.
No.
Yeah, no. In previous meetings, the response to that is they are available through a right to know request. But we can forward the meeting minutes.
Right. I was going to say the meeting minutes, Constable Knapp, are always posted on our website after they're approved. And we have the meeting minutes out there, and they're actually pretty detailed.
Sure. No, and I appreciate that, and certainly read the minutes. I guess my only comment would just be that, these are, sometimes 2-hour or longer meetings, and there's a lot of good information and dialogue that might not get fully captured in the minutes. So being that they're already recorded, I think it's just a question of whether we might be able to, hear those even over and over again for, discussion in the constable population. So as I understand it, the comment was that these are available through Right to Know. I guess, just as a follow-up, could they be published and made available without the need of a right to know request.
We will
And on
broach,
that comment,
we'll broach that with legal counsel, and someone will get back to you.
Very good. Thank you.
Sorry,
Okay,
John, I
thank
didn't
you,
mean to interrupt you.
no, that's all right, Sal.
All right, do we have anybody else, Tracy?
No.
Previously, do we have anybody else out there, public voice that want to comment at this time?
Chair
Okay,
Westover, Chair
Yes, go
Westover,
ahead.
Tony Luongo from Temple University. I just wanted to voice in and say good morning. I've been on a landline connection instead of the Teams.
Okay, very good. Everything going well out your way?
Yes, things are going pretty well. Yeah, we're as was mentioned earlier, the training year is wrapping up. We are working closely with PCCD staff to chart the 2024 training calendar, and in about 2 weeks, we'll be concluding the online courses, and we appreciate your support and the board's support in encouraging constables who may be waiting to complete it to finish up post haste. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, I guess I'll wrap up public voice. Do I have anybody that would request a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Walden Davis make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second on that? Second. Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries and the meeting has been concluded. Thank you.